Greetings and welcome again to the Force4Good Podcast. I'm Dennis Brooks, Senior Superintendent of Police here at the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Now, this week, my guests are Detective Inspector Marcel Bedwood, the head of the JCF's Stolen Motor Vehicle Unit, and Detective Sergeant Joseph Morris, Training Officer at the unit. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Well, one of the realities is that we work hard for the assets that we acquire. And one of our most prized possessions very often is the motor vehicle that we have managed to acquire. And so that is why it is all the more traumatic when we step outside maybe one morning or after an event, we walk to the parking lot and that motor vehicle is gone. It is stolen. Here comes the Stolen Motor Vehicle Unit because ultimately investigations fall under you. Let's first and foremost locate the Stolen Motor Vehicle Unit within the architecture of the JCF. Detective Inspector?
All right, so the unit has been about for a while. Prior to 2014, when CTAC was formed, the unit fell under Flying Squad. The unit's mandate is to take over or assist with complex stolen motor vehicle investigations. We maintain a database which speaks to stolen motor vehicles and recoveries. We do training sensitization for police personnel island-wide as it relates to detecting irregularities in motor vehicle as also larceny motor vehicle investigations. Those are the core functions of the unit.
So, Sir Morris, in training the people who investigate these matters, to what extent do you train them to work with other formations within the JCF and also our strategic partners?
Well, in terms of training for the collaboration aspect of things, we know for CTAC we work right across the country. Therefore, we will need the support of the various divisions, the officers within the division. So therefore, the training has to include the collaborative aspect of it. And we need the support of external partners such as the Tax Administration, Jamaica Island Traffic Authority, etc. So we have to build that network, that rapport to ensure that when we do our work, it is effective. And we do training for the entire JCF. And when we go to the JCF, that is what we push for as well.
Well, Sir Ben, what I know, I'm going to be very careful in how I ask the question. I know that in the modern JCF, we must leverage technology in all our investigations. And because you're dealing with stolen motor vehicles, which are, in many instances nowadays, they are highly advanced computers. They're driving mobile computers. To what extent can you share some of the technology that we are able to leverage in investigating stolen motor vehicles?
All right, without saying too much as it relates to the technology, the smart check devices that are issued to the average officer on the streets is a good tool that we use to real time give us information as it relates to if a vehicle is stolen or not. There's also the utilization of the Jamaica Eye system, which helps us to detect stolen motor vehicles and other vehicles on the roadway.
And let's talk about Smart Check a bit, because persons might not appreciate how crucial that is compared to when we didn't have it. So what are we able to do now in 2025 that we weren't able to do in 1995, for instance?
All right, so prior to the inception of the Smart Check systems, police officers would have to call in to verify if a vehicle is stolen at Police Emergency Center.
As in, a policeman stops a vehicle,
uses his cell phone or the radio to call in to verify if a vehicle is stolen. Now, in a matter of seconds, he could type in, after logging into the Smart Check system, he could type in the chassis number or the plate number for the motor vehicle. And the system itself would tell us if the vehicle is stolen or otherwise.
and that's across the country.
That's across the island.
And we also utilize Jamaica Eye, especially when there's a report of something. We are able to leverage that technology.
Yes, we do.
And have we seen improvements in how we're able to detect and also investigate after the fact?
From the view of the unit, yes, we've had instances where the turnover time for recoveries have been increased. We have vehicles stolen early morning, and by daybreak, the vehicles are recovered.
All right, let me ask you, because there are different things that are happening. Sometimes there are different patterns. Every year is not the same. What are some of the challenges this year that are giving the stolen motor vehicle units a headache?
All right, so the use of technology by criminals is one of the most topical issues that we're having now. The time in which it takes for persons to discover their vehicle stolen would give the criminals enough time to disable or take out some of the tracking devices, alarm systems that were placed in there to prevent the vehicles from being stolen. Those are the two major issues that we're having now.
But what are they using now that they weren't using before?
There are devices that grabs the signal from the key fobs and causes the criminals to transmit them with other devices to the vehicle, giving them easier access to the vehicle and a quicker time to move away with the vehicles.
So rather than having to smash a glass,
Is it.
that's the old way.
That is it. That is it.
Okay. And so does it still make sense to equip your vehicle with these alarms and these things?
Yes, it does, because as was stated in previous interviews, the turnover time for the criminals is delayed when the alarm systems are in place, the trackers are in place, and such likes. Because if it is that the vehicle alarm goes off in the process of them trying to enter the vehicle, it would give the occupants of the house or the premise the time to come out and see that the vehicle is actually being taken or attempted to be taken.
All right. Sir Morris, when you get, for instance, the opportunity to train people, to advance, to improve people who are members of the force, there are many people who may think that they are interested in working maybe with stolen motor vehicles, or maybe they don't realize that they have the aptitude to work in this particular area. What are some of the skill sets that people who are good in this area, for instance, bring to the table that you like to work with?
Well, some of the skill sets is the ability to identify when vehicles are tampered with, when they are stolen. Training opportunities as well to do forensic restoration of serial numbers that are tampered with. So those are some of the benefits that can come from working at the unit, and some of the strengths we are looking for from individuals. Or you have a liking for motor vehicles, you have an understanding of the various parts and how things operate as it relates to tampering, what it should look like when it is good, and advising individuals what they are not to do and what they are to do when purchasing vehicles, etc.
Detective Inspector, there are persons listening, and I'm acutely aware of the fact that, you know, the members of the constabulary who are watching this conversation are also saying, I think maybe my career could take me in this direction, to work with Sir Bedward and his team. I mean, the opportunities for growth in this particular area are significant given, you know, modern demands of law enforcement. You know, what size team do you currently have?
The team is currently 20 plus, based
okay.
on the increase that we're having in the larcenies. We're looking to build out the team a little bit further. The unit is within CETAC. So if there are persons who are interested in coming to the unit with probably mechanical background, automotive, electronics background, we would entertain them.
Definitely. And so within the broader structure of CETAC, because CETAC's mandate is to go after organized crime, it make the point for me that the impact of this is not the small man, because essentially what we're seeing is organized criminals utilize the stolen motor vehicle market as a source of ill-gotten gain.
All right, so if you look at the statistics for last year, the losses amount to over $3 billion. So we're
$3
speaking about,
billion.
that's correct. We're
Yes.
speaking about $3 billion going into the pockets of criminals. The place where the unit is hosted is CTOC, where our mandate is to dismantle gangs, disrupt gangs, take away financing from them. So we collaborate heavily with the fraud squad, FID, as also the anti-gang unit within CTOC. So if it is that we discover a ring or a group of persons stealing motor vehicles, they're treated as a gang. And if it is that they have assets, the assets will be seized upon the conclusion of the investigation.
Do you find that stolen motor vehicle rings tend to work very closely with some of the more established criminal organizations that we often hear about on the news? You know, you hear about this gang and that gang in this particular division. Do you see a kind of a marriage between them?
What we're seeing that there are roles that individuals play, and they're attached to different gangs and different areas. We're not necessarily seeing a coming together of all of them, but there are specific roles that specific persons play in relation to the successful accomplishment of this, the larceny and the sale of the goods.
There are some people who say, look, this is the kind of vehicle that I drive. I don't drive that kind of a vehicle that people want to steal. People want to steal and they name out the types of vehicles. There are some of the most stolen vehicles. Let me ask you that, Sir Morris. What are some of the most stolen motor vehicles in the country?
Well, what the data is showing us is that the top three models of vehicles that are stolen, or make of vehicles that are stolen, are the Toyotas, Nissans, and Hondas. As it relates to the Toyota category, we're seeing the Voxes as among the highest. Probox is the one that is leading, and Axio is third. For Nissan, we're seeing the AD Wagon, and for the Hondas, we're seeing the Honda Fit, Honda Grace, and Honda Civic. So those are the top three make, and for the make, those are the models.
And is it that these are popular cars in the market generally? So if you steal them, they're almost ubiquitous, such that they're easy to pass off in any community.
That is correct. That is correct. The fact that they are popular, they have a market for the parts and for the resale of the vehicles after they change the chassis number, for example. So it is easier to sell and they're easier to get saved for the parts and the dismantling.
You mentioned, of course, some of the modern ways that they're now stealing cars. What would you say are some practical methods that we can utilize, the average car owner can utilize to target harden their vehicle, whether it's at a party or in their driveway?
Well, some advice that I can give them for party attendees: choose to park in the parking areas that are provided for. There is security personnel watching your vehicles, as opposed to leaving the vehicle unattended along the roadway. Because for the events where we are seeing large number of vehicles stolen, it is predominantly where the vehicles are parked and left unattended along roadways. For persons at their homes, if you have a garage or a gate, you lock your gate with padlocks. Park it on your garage. Choose areas that are well lit to park your vehicle when you're out. Avoid parking in secluded areas. Choose parking under cameras. Install the various devices, the tracking devices, the kill switches, steering locks, immobilizers, etc. And those are some of the ways you can safeguard the vehicle.
Would you then say that there's no one thing that you should do? There's a range of things that possibly you should
We
do.
recommend multiple layers of security based on what is going on now. So if you are going to be utilizing them, you can utilize 3 or 4 of the suggested means to protect your motor vehicles.
Sir Bedward, let me ask then. You step out, party just done, your vehicle is stolen. the first few moments are critical. What do you recommend people do? Because there are sometimes things that people get wrong, and then they sometimes blame the stolen motor vehicle unit for it. What are some things that you would say immediately? This is what we think you should be doing.
The usual: call police emergency, visit the nearest station and make a formal report so the vehicle can be properly documented as stolen. So the policing efforts can start immediately.
So you go, is it good to have pictures, or it doesn't matter because of the database that exists? What would you say?
All right, so upon making the report, it's suggested that you give as much detail as is possible, as in accurate, precise details as relates to your motor vehicle. You might not necessarily have the chassis number on at the time, but if there are issues with the vehicle, if there's say for argument's sake, a broken light, there's a hit to the left fender, or there's a scratch on the door, document those properly in your statement. So if the vehicle is recovered, we can use some of those things to identify.
And so I want to go back to the issue of tracking, because yes, people promote the use of vehicle trackers, and there are sometimes concerns even about the people who you give your vehicle to put a tracker on it, or you give your vehicle to put a kill switch on it. Would you argue then that we should be more careful with whom we are entrusting our vehicles to put in place even the protective devices, Saras?
Most definitely. We'd suggest you use reputable individuals, reputable business places to do these installations, because there are persons who will install these devices and you locate a vehicle at a later time and steal it. So
And that is something that we have seen over the years.
we have seen that already.
Sir Morris, let's look at the reality of 2025, and what are some of the things that we are seeing? There are some traditional spaces, there are some traditional areas that we have seen a concern, and there are some areas that we think we may be on the rise. Tell us, from your looking at the statistics, what would you say is the main hot spot for stolen motor vehicle?
Well, currently what the data is showing is the St. Andrew Central Division being where most vehicles are stolen from. The Central Division is the location that has Alpha 3 town centers, New Kingston town centers, where there's a high
Volume,
traffic. Quite so. For the communities, we are seeing Mona and Oak Pastures and Richmond Park as some of the communities where we're getting a high number of reports of stolen vehicles. We're seeing St. James as well, popping up in the top 4, and St. Andrew North. For St. Andrew North, it would be some areas closer to Price Mart areas and up
Havendale, Meadowbrook, that kind of.
quite so.
Is it that we're saying people who park on the side of the road, communities where you don't have as much parking, or you don't have as much parking for yourself, that you have to be now, parking on a road, you have to be sharing spaces, that those are the spaces that we're seeing, or it is very much random? Because these are things that opportunity demands.
Yes, as you said, it's a crime of opportunity. If the vehicle is parked along the roadway, it is easier for the criminals to have access to the vehicle unimpeded. So we're recommending that persons engage in their community neighborhood watch groups. We are presently doing public sensitization as it relates to being aware of where you park your vehicle. If the community comes together and you know that the neighbor parks their car, you know the neighbor, and you see somebody in the area lurking that should not or is not known to you, you could probably contact the police or alert other residents of the person's presence.
Help me, because a part of reporting it, yes, I'm going to report it to my insurer because it is insured for that purpose, but a part of your investigation is to recover. What is the level of recovery, generally speaking, that we are seeing in the country?
Well, what's the stat is showing us currently, we're having an 18% increase in the recovery rate when compared to the similar period.
This year, recoveries are up 18%. Okay. I gather I've heard it said that the stealing of motor vehicles is up as well. What percentage are we looking at as of today?
Well, as of today, we are seeing a 6% increase in the amount of vehicles being stolen. Earlier in the year, it was a bit higher, but with the efforts of officers on the ground and support, we are seeing it trending up. So the increase now is
And as the recovery rate goes up, I would imagine that maybe persons might see less of an opportunity, and so they may be backing off. Is there a time of year, for instance, Christmas or around the Independence period when lots of people are occupying public spaces, or a heavy party season? Do we see those periods as periods when the theft of motor vehicles goes up?
well, the theft occurs right throughout the year, but we are definitely see where there's an influx when there is the holiday period. So persons are out celebrating, attending events and so forth, and criminals capitalize on the opportunity.
So the message here is that when you're out having fun, the criminals are out as well. So you need to fortify your vehicle as much as possible in these periods of time. I want to then look at the fact that you're recovering, but where you're recovering is not necessarily where the vehicles are stolen from. Just like where the vehicle theft is taking place, it's not necessarily that the location where the thieves are from. Speak to that.
All right, so you'd find that the statistics suggest that there are areas within the island that are, for want of a better word, hubs for car thieves. But these said areas are not necessarily areas that the vehicles are being stolen from. But we'll have more recoveries in those areas. Sometimes we have recoveries to the extent that the vehicles are not necessarily able to be identified as a vehicle because they're so scrapped and cut up that we're having issues to identify them as a unit.
So, which also affects your statistics, I would imagine, in terms of your recoveries. You've recovered something, but you can't officially label it as such. And so the reality, we see chop shops in places like St. Catherine, for instance.
Yes, we do. And we're currently on a drive to visit parts place of the proprietors account for the parts that they have selling, as also we're visiting car marts and doing checks on motor vehicles to ensure that the car marts are not the ones who are selling vehicles that are stolen.
I want you to speak to that because it is a reality that many people acquire parts suspiciously and they look the other way and they sell parts, and people will buy car parts at an amazing price, and they're not considering the price that other people are paying for that.
All right, so there's a component of our unit that scores the social media. And we would know the going rate of cars, we'd know the going rate of parts. If it is that these parts are being sold below the market value, in our opinion, we would visit these locations, we'd conduct sting operations and such like, without saying much.
So again, another message coming out of that would be that if you in your community, in your parish, are aware of persons who are selling car parts or cars at suspiciously low prices, you may wish to contact your local police because those cars or those parts might be the product of the stolen motor vehicle market here in Jamaica. It is something that we are most concerned about. And it's almost like with predial larceny. Meat just suddenly comes turning up at a very low price. It may be the product of stolen goods. And in this sort of way, these chop shops benefit from people's silence or their dishonesty, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I'd agree with you.
Mhm. All right. So when we now look at the links and the patterns and the areas of success that we have seen, tell me a little bit about some of the things at the unit that you are, since you've been there, you're most proud of in terms of some of the investigations and the work that we've been able to do.
All right, so we've been using the data to dictate our policing response. Prior to now, we'd appreciate reports and do investigations as it relates to stolen motor vehicle or license of motor vehicle. Presently, we're using big data system to study where the vehicles are stolen, the time that the vehicle is stolen, the areas that they're recovered in, and we're patrolling the areas that they're recovered in and the areas that they're stolen in. That gives us the proactive aspect of things that we can limit or lessen the larcenies and increase the recoveries.
Mhm. So we're hoping that by the end of this year, we should see a continued trend of decline in the theft of motor vehicles and an increase in the recovery of same. Gentlemen, I thank you very much for joining me this week. It's been a great conversation. My guests have been the head of the Stolen Motor Vehicle Unit at CTOC, Detective Inspector Marcel Bedward, and the training officer at the Stolen Motor Vehicle Unit, Detective Sergeant Joseph Morris. Until next time, here on the Force for Good podcast, take care.